Welcome to the Soul Mirror, a space where we slow down enough to notice the inner patterns, emotional truths, and unspoken longings that shape how we experience our lives. I am your host, Pragya, and my guest today is Dr. Christian, who is an award winning international transformational speaker, mentor, and best selling author of the Elvis Syndrome. His work speaks directly to high achieving, successful women who appear to have it all, yet privately wrestle with a sense of emptiness, restlessness, or emotional disconnection they can't quite explain. And we all feel that, right? In this conversation, we are exploring a radically different understanding of happiness, the soul, and what becomes possible when we stop chasing fulfillment and start listening to what's already present within us. And with that, I hand over the platform to Dr. Christian. And firstly, I welcome you to the show. And it's a pleasure and my honor to host you today. And I'm looking forward to this beautiful conversation.
Me as well, partner. It's so great to have been offered this platform in which I can share with you and the listeners what is so very close to my heart. And coming to the call, preparing for it, what I came up with is the following. I have a particular view on life and how we live it, and that is captured in this first line. I believe we have all come here to Earth with a treasure map in our backpack. And the dotted line on that map shows the soul guided adventure we are meant to make. The black cross marks the place where we find the treasure. And in this case, the treasure is to find who we truly are. In this interview, I would like to walk you through the steps of how such a journey can unfold. Maybe time wise, we cannot get through it all, but at least we can make a start on how that might look like. It's very much like putting a puzzle together. You have all these single pieces lying on the table all over the place, but in life, there's no picture on top of the box. So when you start on such a transformational journey, you actually don't have much of an idea of what you've gotten yourself into. Now, in my work as a coach and mentor, as you already pointed out, I mainly work with affluent self-seeking women over 40, those who have it all, yet still feel empty, unfulfilled, and unhappy. And I would like to use them as an example to illustrate certain principles that can be applied to anyone. Now, let me give you a little bit of a context. In the world of high society, there's an unwritten rule that says that it is not done to openly and sometimes even not privately speak about your darker, deeper, unpleasant feelings and thoughts. Now, just to be clear, I am not here to criticize that rule. I understand why it has come into being, what its function is, and why it has been important. At the same time, I feel it's time to give voice to what the consequences are of doing it in the way it has been done until now. Now, here's a tip. Everyone's soul's journey is greatly determined by the circumstances one finds oneself in at the start. And I talk from experience. And then, of course, later in life, other experiences come on top of it, sometimes actually reinforcing the impression we gathered at the beginning. For instance, take a moment to look at, and this is my invitation to you and the listeners, to look at how the circumstances were when you, listening to this interview, started your life journey. Perhaps you grew up in an environment where you were not allowed to express your true, authentic feelings. Perhaps you were not appreciated or welcomed as who you were at that time. If you can, you know how that feels. Another tip. In case there's a situation where someone had to numb their feelings, there's a principle at play that works like this. The stronger the unpleasant feelings are numbed, which actually means they are pushed into the subconscious, thinking they're gone, but they're not really, automatically the ability to experience pleasant feelings becomes restricted. And if that goes on long enough, then that's exactly the reason why at some point someone becomes unable to feel happy anymore, despite having a lifestyle dreams are made of. Now, I have noticed that recently a shift has taken place. Different kinds of clients are approaching me to ask for assistance, and the issues they present are more pressing, more urgent, and more complex. When I have this first initial conversation nowadays, they report that yes, they have it all, but still something is not quite right. Still something is missing. Yet they have no idea what is causing it, and therefore also no clue what to be done to resolve it. Another thing that they say is that they don't know what makes them, or they know what makes them unhappy, and they have already done a lot of work. But no matter how hard they try, no matter what they have done, they come to the point where deep down something seems not to have made any real difference. Another thing they might say is that increasingly encounter situations they have already seen many times before in their life. It's like a red thread, a theme running through the course of their life. And at this very moment, they are again confronted with that situation, with that particular person or that particular physical condition. And this time, it has actually gone worse. Or they tell me, I thought that I had dealt with certain issues. For me, it was already done and over with. But now, to my unpleasant surprise, these old issues are resurfacing again. Why? What is happening here? Tip here again. And that is that in a soul guided journey, we are all offered pleasant as well as unpleasant situations and experiences. This is part of life, it's unavoidable. And even more strongly put, the unpleasant ones also have a function. Look at an oyster. At some point, life blows a worthless grain of sand in its belly. It's aching, irritating, painful, annoying. Yet over time, the oyster finds a way to transform it into a beautiful, precious pearl. And that is what I believe we humans are invited to do as well. The question here is, why is it that we are confronted in life with these issues that are now so intensifying so rapidly? And that has to do with the transition into the fifth dimensional way of living. Let me briefly explain what the transition is about. It's not a place to go to. It refers to an inner state of being. It's happening, this transition happens within. We are living in this 3D reality that once we have lived in for centuries. And the thing is that, and that's what I believe in, others might disagree with me, but it is simply not wise, let us put it like this, to jump into the fifth dimensional way of living just like that. I believe it is important that in order to reach that inner state, that we move through the fourth dimension first. Why do we say that? Moving through the fourth dimension serves three essential functions. The first is gaining greater understanding and clarity of who we are and why we are here on earth. Secondly, practicing the qualities that awaits us in 5D, which means that we are all invited already to explore and to cultivate and to actually start applying those qualities already now, while we'll still live here and bound to, in some ways, to the 3D reality. And thirdly, and this is an important one, it is a time to cleanse and to clear the conditioning we have built up during our time living here in 3D. Why is that important? Think about climbing a mountain. The higher you go, the more necessary it becomes to let go of what you're carrying. We cannot take everything we gathered at base camp with us to the top. Won't work. Another way of saying it is that our conditioning is built from, let's say, limiting beliefs, negative feelings, and the habits that we have developed due to unpleasant experiences and traumatic events that we have encountered. All this conditioning served us well at first. It helped us to feel safe, and even for some, it helped us to survive the situations that were difficult. But over time, these this conditioning begins to work against us. And particularly now, you may already have noticed that it greatly interferes with what you truly want in life, sometimes holding you back and sometimes completely blocking you from creating the life you long to live. Now, imagine even further, if we were to take all that conditioning with us into the fifth dimensional way of living, it would interfere even more than it already does in our current 3D reality. Clearly, that simply won't work. So here, an additional tip. I believe the soul of every one of us has extended the invitation to go on such a journey. Now, whether we accept it or not is up to each of us individually. And here we are facing a challenge. And that has to do with this. We are created with a conscious, subconscious, and an unconscious mind. The characteristic of the subconscious and unconscious is that we store things in there of which we are not yet or not anymore conscious. There are exceptions, but usually we can only transform, heal, or release something we hold in our subconscious and unconscious once it becomes conscious. Think about it. How can you work on something you are unaware of? So here's another tip. The reason it is important to become conscious of what wants or needs to be healed is because it holds a lesson. And that lesson wants to be learned. And it can only be learned, again, when we become conscious of what it is. So the question here is, and that's an interesting one I find, how can we become conscious of what we are not yet or no longer conscious of? Here's the thing. There's an expression in Sufism. Everything in this world, 3D world, is done through mirrors. In order to become conscious of what we are not conscious of, we need something that touches, that stirs up, and that brings it into awareness. And that is the function of a mirror. And another word of a mirror is a catalyst. And a mirror / the catalyst shows up in our lives as a particular situation, a specific person or people, or a physical condition. Those are all wake-up calls that invites us that wants so much for us to go through that through fourth dimensional state and to cleanse and clear ourselves from it. Now, it is exactly the working of these mirrors that caused these issues my clients report that I just earlier mentioned. Feeling something is missing, but not knowing what is causing it and what to do about it. Working very, very, very hard to change something, but noticing that on a deeper level, it doesn't make any difference. Situations, certain people keep showing up time and time again, and it's getting worse. Or old issues once thought to have dealt with suddenly starts resurfacing. That is all the working of the mirrors, the catalyst that show up in our lives, you see. And it is exactly the working of these catalysts that explains why issues now are intensifying so rapidly. And to summarize it in one statement, the characteristic of the fourth dimension is that it stirs up everything we cannot take with us into the fifth. The question then becomes, are we willing to listen? Are we willing to look into those mirrors? Are we willing to walk the path of self-reflection? Often, our soul's journey doesn't go as planned because we forgot to listen. We don't want to listen. Or we ignore the guidance of our soul is offering. As a result, we deviate from the path that serves our highest wellness, wholeness, and well-being. Now, another important point is that because of the complexity and intensity we are now experiencing, we need more refined, upgraded, and newly designed methods to properly address what's going on. The world has changed. We have changed. Traditional methods no longer bring the same benefits they once did. Even familiar routines like yoga or meditation may no longer provide the peace and ease they once offered. And because of the depth and intensity of today's challenges, we are invited to go deeper. What's needed is a deeper transformational process. Now, for some, the moment I say this, resistance and fear arises. And that's understandable. A deeper process implies that it won't always be easy and it takes time. The fear usually comes from two places: fear of what will I encounter? Can I handle it? The other fear is who will I become after I've changed? What I've come to understand is that fear and resistance are actually much easier to address than people think because they are based on ignorance. When I speak with someone who has come to ask me for support, that's often the first thing I address. When I explain that resistance can be a good sign, sometimes indicating that more preparation is needed before diving into such a deeper process. Resistance often softens immediately. And when I address the fear, I point out that the acronym of fear stands for false expectations appearing real. Once that becomes clear, and once I explain what I can offer so that they can feel more confident, also the fear decreases significantly. And about the second fear, who will I become? That can be addressed by identifying and replacing negative associations that are attached to what is going to happen in the future with positive ones. Often through clarifying why that particular journey and go on that journey is so important, why it matters, and to keep in mind what they are going to gain and accomplish once they're there, how that will feel like and how good it will be. How does someone know if they are ready? I use simple scales from 1, 0 to 10 to assess unconscious willingness, agreement, and commitment. Willingness asks, am I willing to engage? Agreement asks, does this align with who I truly am and desire? Commitment asks, am I truly going to do what it takes? And here's my final tip: differentiate. Learn to distinguish between you, the adult self, this is the you I'm now talking to, and the parts of you that may resist change. The adult self knows change is necessary, right? The fearful parts do not. Just like a parent who knows what is best for a child, sometimes we must move forward despite resistance, which means, to stay in this metaphor, to decide to pick up the child, despite the kicking and the screaming and the tantrum it's throwing up, and to bring it to where it is safe and where it can find comfort. And with that, we've now completed the puzzle.
That was, oh my God, so beautiful. Um, I've been enlightened. You put through how, um, life is and what life is. In such a 15-minute talk, you summed it up that, sometimes it's okay to be misaligned. Sometimes, as you quoted, right, that move forward even if you feel resistance. That is what life is. And you've told so many things that just that revolve around, and I'm so sure that the listeners resonate with it too, because life is actually a puzzle. And how beautifully you've taken us through three dimensions, and moving on to fourth dimension, and how necessary it is to also reach there. And then the misconceptions that you and the bubbles that you burst about the fifth dimension, and how the 3D affects the 4D, and all of it, how intertwined it is. Oh my God, that was so beautiful. Thank you for taking us through that journey, and thank you for you know making it feel so easy to understand. I mean, um, it was so beautiful. I'm falling short of words, but it was enlightening. Thank you for that.
My pleasure, Pragya, and all the listeners here. Yes.
Um, Now that you talked about so many things, there's just one question that comes up to my mind, and uh, that is something that I feel is the most important one as of now. So, for someone who was listening to the journey and recognizes themselves in it, that okay, probably I am in this situation where I can't let myself take a step forward, and I am stuck in a dimension, and they're feeling afraid. You talked about fear, you talked about the synonyms of fear, and if they are feeling afraid of dismantling the life they've built, that okay, we're here right now, but if I take steps or if I don't take steps, probably this would fall too. So, what is a compassionate first step towards reconnecting with the soul that does not require drastic change but invites honesty? So, the question here is how to acknowledge the honesty and how to honestly look about your situation first, feel it, acknowledge it, and then take steps. Because a lot of us are afraid to do that too, because that would dismantle everything that is theirs. Yeah, that is the question.
Yeah. What I've encountered in my own life, the first step that is so important to establish first is to make sure to create the proper conditions and circumstances to do this work in a safe and secure, and if you will, sacred way. So much has to do, and I spoke about these parts in us. When I speak about these parts in us, there are different ways to look at it. One way is that these parts are actually the younger who we have been in the past, the 8-year old that has gone through very, very difficult situations. And due to what happens, particularly when the situation has to do with a certain traumatic event, that's a moment where that part got stuck in time. I call it a frozen moment. And from that moment, that part has stopped growing, had being stuck in time. We still carry it with us in growing up and being the adult we are now. And what is so important in engaging in a transformational process and in a process of change, what we so much desire and long for, is to establish a relationship with that younger part of us that is based on trust, that is based on safety. And because of providing that to ourselves, because that is the beauty of it, we can provide those qualities and that we can provide and should actually provide it to that part of us. You can see it as there's no one else in the whole world who can do it better than you. You see, and when that child feels comforted, when it feels safe, then it is willing to allow the conditions to fade away and to step into with you together into that new life, the new to become the new you're always from the start are meant to be, and in fact actually already are at the moment. It's just a matter of letting the 3D reality, it needs time to catch up.
It surely does, and thank you for that, because creating a safe space with yourself is the first best thing that you can do to yourself, and that helps. And I'm so sure you've experienced so many things in your life, and you coming up and sharing your journey with this whole subset of the journey.
Yeah, there's one particular thing that I'm aware of, and you mentioned it already, righteously so, that yes, it can be that someone here on the call is listening who finds themselves in a situation where they feel they're kind of not quite sure how to move forward, or call it stuck, or whatever word you use. And um, for this, I want to say, for anyone listening who feels that something of what I've shared resonated, I love to offer you a little gift. It's a short downloadable ebook called The 5 Steps to Transform Any Negative Feeling or Thought Anytime, Anywhere in 7 minutes or less. And I created it because for many years in my own life, I carried emotions, negative emotions, far longer than I needed to, simply because no one ever showed me that they can be transformed much quicker, much better, even when needed, instantly in a moment. And the advantage of this little ritual I put together is that it prevents you from suppressing of you what you don't like to feel or think. And instead, to turn those feelings and thoughts into something that energizes and empowers and uplifts you. You'll find the link in the show notes. It's a simple download and you'll receive it by email. And in addition, for those of you who have it all yet feel still unfulfilled and sense the desire to take a deeper step to free yourself from what is burdening you, for you, I also offer a complimentary From Pointless to Purpose treasure map consultation. It's a 1 hour conversation where you can experience how I work, ask your questions directly, and explore whether I'm the right person to assist you in making the changes that may set you free. Just to be clear, this is a no pressure consultation. There are no obligations. It is simply an invitation to explore.
That's beautiful. And listeners, please take notes and please follow up the steps because again, as doctor said, it's a no force consultation. You can reach out to him whenever you want and however you want. And trust me with this, I have felt the energy and I hope you do too, that it is going to be amazing if you reach out to him. And I have something too for our listeners. So, for anybody who is listening who feels outwardly successful yet inwardly empty, I leave you with this question. Because what I feel is when we give out questions or when there is a question that we rethink about in our minds, we introspect a lot. And that leads us to acknowledge our feelings. So, the question goes like this, that what feeling have you been avoiding because it does not fit the version of success you have built? And what might it be asking of you instead? Pause, reflect on this. It does not have to be, necessarily a very vast answer in your head. Just acknowledge that feeling which comes up and you'll get your answer. And what I took from you today was that happiness is not something that we earn by doing more or, becoming better. It emerges when the soul is finally allowed to be present inside the life we already have. So the soul is aligned with the life that you're having, and the soul is also feeling present over there. So that is what I take away from you today, Dr. Christian. And yeah, it has been a pleasure hosting you. Thank you for joining us on the Soul Mirror. And if today stirred something tender, uncomfortable, or quietly familiar, listeners, let it stay with you without rushing to explain it or fix it. You don't always have to fix it, and that is what you should take from Dr. Christian today. And as we step into a new year, may you allow success to soften, happiness to deepen, and your relationship with yourself to become more honest and compassionate. Until next time, this is Pragya signing off